so much, Hemang and Vinayak, for taking out time for doing this with me today. And this is all about, mental, a session for mentors, right? There are a lot of startup mentors and a lot of startup mentoring happening. And we figured that we should get people who've had a lot of experience of mentoring startups come to us, and on this session and talk about what is startup mentoring about. How is it how is it different than mentoring, coaching people generally, in life, in your profession, and so what are the sort of challenges that you see there? And because you've had so much experience of mentoring so many startups, what is it that what is it that you can tell future mentors or people who are interested in mentoring different startups? So a lot of people with great professional experience want to contribute to the ecosystem, but I think there is no, for lack of better word, no pedagogical training available, which tells you that this is the way to do it right, and this is not the way to do it, and things like that. So the experience is there, the knowledge is there, but getting it out to the startup and to the ecosystem is sort of limited as of now. It's definitely happening, it's definitely improving, but yeah, we're trying to, through this session, we're trying to accelerate that, so that people with more and more people with experience and knowledge can come forward and become great mentors. So with that thought, let me introduce the two gentlemen we have today, the two experts. Number one is Vinayak Hegde, who is CTO-in-Residence at Microsoft for Startups. And I would, let Vinayak give a quick 1 minute introduction about what is his charter, and what is he doing as a CTO-in-Residence at Microsoft.
So Microsoft for Startups is a global team, and we run various programs for startups. And my role specifically in that is actually to help startup CTOs, VP engineering, basically senior technical leadership, both on three parts, basically technology, like how to choose a stack, how to scale, help them with processes, like, for example, how to have better security processes, how to do more rapid deployments. What do you do when there's an incident? How do you handle that? In what kind of processes, in terms of post-mortem, or in live handling you need to have for production. And the third part is obviously in terms of people, right? How do you grow your team? How do you hire? How do you mentor them? And how do you also, in some sense, build technical ladders for them to grow? So that is basically what I do. And prior to Microsoft, I have been the CTO at Zoomcar, and I have worked with a bunch of startups. I've been a founder myself, and I've been a part of a company that has got acquired, and that was Speed Era, which got acquired by Akhma, and it set up the Akhma India Engineering. Another notable stint was also as an early employee at InMobi, where I built a data stack. So this is kind of my background, and I do work with startups very closely to help them scale the people, their processes, and the technology.
Great, thank you so much. And next we have Dr. Hemang Shah, who comes with very, very long and diverse experience, and he is currently the Director and India Engineering Lead at Qualcomm Technology. And Hemang, why don't you take a minute and tell us about what are you doing in this role?
Sure. Thanks, Ujjwal. Thanks, Vinayak and Headstart for having us here. Great initiative, by the way. So at Qualcomm, I lead our startup programs. So there are a few which I'm actively a part of from a leadership perspective. The flagship program that we have been running since 2016 is called Qualcomm Design in India Challenge. And this is a program where, till date, we have incubated 89 startups in the hardware IoT space. So the applications that they cover, pretty much cover the entire spectrum. Whether someone's building a drone, a medtech device, they could be building like a bike tracker, telematics, so agri-tech. So it's an entire vast domain of applications that we cover. My involvement in this program started purely from an IP perspective, where I have an intellectual property background, where I was advising the startups, mentoring them on their IP strategy. And now I have both the engineering and IP charters, for this program. And additionally, from that, I've been lead on 2 other programs. These are pure mentorship programs. One is for women-founded deep tech startups. It's called the Qualcomm Women Entrepreneurs India Network. And the other program, which actually we closed the applications for that over the weekend, it's called the Qualcomm Semiconductor Mentorship Program. So to mentor semiconductor startups, and the other one is for women-founded deep tech startups. So that, being a part of these programs has given me a flavor of sort of what the startup challenges are, and I try to manage that with, I guess, my family background of proper or pakka baniya family, as you call it, right? Where startups are building businesses at the end of the day, but I bring in the tech and IP flavor too.
Great, amazing. So thank you so much for your introductions, gentlemen. And now we would start the session. So just to tell everyone, essentially, see, this is I would love to have take as many questions from you as possible, and we have both the experts here who are available to answer. Quick intro about myself. My name is Ujjwal Trivedi, and I lead this product called WorkInSync at this company called WorkInSync. And it's a hybrid workplace solution. I also, I'm part of the board at Headstart Network Foundation, who is organizing, the Startup September, and of which this session is a part. So, thanks again, everyone. So first of all, and this is a question for both of you, Hemang, I'd like to go first, and then Vinayak. So essentially, startup mentoring or a one-to-one session, or a you to a startup group session, what do you expect from the mentees? What do you expect? What are your expectations pre-mentoring, and then while mentoring, and then post-mentoring? So that is something that I wanted to start with.
I think it goes with the purpose of that mentorship. There are times where I would say someone approaches you for purely tactical advice. I don't call that mentorship, and it's important to clarify that is this person asking me for something which is like just a immediate problem that they want to solve, and that I don't consider as mentorship. You are more
like an advice.
Yeah,
keep picking the brain, right?
You give them your input, and they are on their journey. The mentorship is something which is somewhat of a medium term to a long term goal, right? Where they are approaching you with a problem, and it's possible that sometimes they don't have a problem identified yet. And my task with them or my expectation rather, would be to have some kind of an honesty from their side as they open up that, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing. I love the why, what, how framework, right? Like, why are they solving the problem? What are they doing about it? Challenging their assumptions. And until they are honest, you won't really be able to give them the feedback that they can impact their lives. So I expect that level of truthfulness with you, because it's on a one-on-one setting. It's not in a group setting where an investor might hear things and, let's say take offense, for example. The other thing which I expect is that an onus on the mentee. So there is a follow-up which is required. It's not like a one and done type of thing. It could be a meeting every 2 weeks. It could be a meeting every month. I would expect the mentee or the startup founder to reach out, to update and seek for follow-on meetings. Because I've done the other way, where the mentor has tried to say that, hey, when are we meeting next? And that fizzles out very soon. Right. So I think these are my top two, and let's hear from Vinayak.
Sure.
No, absolutely. I think I agree with what Hemang said, right? I think I also personally believe in a more of a pull model where, people do reach out, and that always works much better. The other thing that I try is also to have regular catch-ups. So even if it is, so what happens also sometimes is from the mentee side is that they might think, hey, like Vinayak is really busy or Hemang is really busy, right? And should I keep on disturbing them? So other than obviously the pull, some people are like, more comfortable pull, and some with some you have regular catch-ups. So some regular catch-ups go on for a while, and some are like really quick because they are like very focused on execution. There isn't much to ask, and it's just mostly you getting updates and context, right? And as Hemang said, right, again, like it can be like a point advice, which honestly is not, I would say, mentoring, but it's more like helping them at that point in time and like more tactical. But mentoring is actually, how to understand that thought process, what stage of the journey they are in, right? I think our world is changing like so fast, right? I mean, like if you look at every layer, right? Like we take smartphones for granted, but it's been like, less than 15 years when smartphones.
Yeah. Just I think 2008. So 15 years.
There's no playbook, for a lot of things, right? So it's mostly us trying to make sense of how the world is changing. And as we were talking before this also, it's a two-way street, right? And it's a two-way street that requires empathy. It requires from both sides. It requires open-minded from both sides, and it also requires coachability from both sides, right? So while the mentor himself kind of helps the mentee kind of align his or her thought process, the mentor himself or herself is also learning from the mentee, maybe about a particular industry or a particular stage of the startup or a particular problem in that specific industry, right? So I think the mentor also has to keep their mind open in the sense that can't be a know-it-all and like this is the right way. And often I have seen that while I also forcefully sometimes push back on the mentee in terms of challenging the assumptions. I've also found my own assumptions challenged, right? So I think that also is where the it's a porous boundary, right? Like earlier probably you had like a strict pattern of doing things, but as the world has changed, that pattern is actually changed, right? It's a very porous boundary. So the mentor can be the mentor and mentee roles can be interchanged in that sense. So as long as like people are conscious of that, I think it can be like a good, healthy, fruitful kind of relationship.
Great. Thanks. I think if I may just add a little bit from my experience, I find that mentees are able to give you a lot of great articulation of the problems that you may have solved or you may have seen, but are not like really framed properly or articulated well in your mind, right? And when they come and ask you in a certain way, and you say that this is the right actual problem that I know how to solve, but this is like how you would define that problem. So I think I totally agree that it's a two-way street, and I think mentors have as much to take away as the mentees, if not more. So I think that has to be absolutely clear in everyone's head, that now that we understand the expectations from the mentees, let me jump on to like when the mentoring happens, right? And again, the question is for both of you, and Vinayak, you can go first, is how do you sort of, what's your playbook? How do you diagnose what your mentees need and what do they need and what do they want, because I think sometimes there is a little bit of a difference in what they come asking for versus what they actually need, because they come asking for typically funding related related queries, and you figure out that, boss, there are these 2-3 fundamental things that are not fixed, and until you fix that, you would you not really be a fundable startup. But that's just one example. But yeah, from your stories from the trenches, what is your playbook?
Yeah, so I think there is this thing about the 5 whys, right? Like if you want to do something, you ask why, and then again you ask why, and so on. So I think it is very important to know what is like the root cause, and the challenge is also you are in some sense once removed from the actual problem area, right? So you are hearing somebody's interpretation and you have your own interpretation. But the fact is, like, there are certain problems that are same, there are certain problems that are new. And what a mentor has to be a little bit careful about is, while I have seen this pattern before and I might have tried certain techniques, maybe they didn't work at a particular point in time, right? I can give you just as an example, right? I've solved the same problem in 4 different ways. In the 4 different roles that I have done. A good example is when a startup is initially growing, they have an MVP, they put together a product, and at some point they feel, oh, now this is like a good idea, this is like a good product that can grow. Obviously, it's not like feature complete, maybe it is lacking certain features, and that is like a journey that every product is on. And they want to figure out how the product is getting used. They want to know what are the features that are getting used, what are the customers, what are the areas they can grow in. So there is a lot of need for some kind of analytics, right? And what happens initially is that somebody will write queries, typically the founder or somebody in the development team, and then figure out, oh, what they are actually maybe uploading so much stuff, or they are using this particular feature so much. And then there's ad hoc solution that generates reports and maybe either sends an email. Typically it is like an email report or some kind of quick and dirty dashboard. But as a company starts to grow, that doesn't that kind of starts falling apart, and it really hurts the company. So everyone ends up building some kind of a data warehouse, right? So when I first did this and when I first encountered this, there wasn't any really good, I would say, database or practices around this. It was like almost 15 years back. So and the volume was so large, we had to build our own database, right? If you ask me now, that would be really foolhardy, because just like 3 years from that time, and this was in Akamai, right? We were doing media analytics. 3 years from that time, we had an open source solution. We used like another solution which we use open source. It was not full-fledged, but what we did is, because it was open source, we could extend it, right? Now what has happened is there are a lot of SaaS solutions where you just actually push your logs or everything, and then the SaaS solution provides everything, right? So same problem, but solved in very different ways. Again, there is some, I would say, loss of control in terms of using a SaaS product like as well as building everything yourself, but the amount of engineering effort is very different, right? So you have to be cognizant how the landscape is also changing, right? So you cannot be very static in your mind saying that I did this and it worked for me, so hence you should do this. And again, like I'm super conscious of I always keep telling people, one is your mileage may vary, and also there is also acutely conscious of the information asymmetry that is there when you're solving the problem. And information asymmetry can be in the form of you not knowing enough about the market, that market. It could be the funding scenario. It could be also you're also hearing things from the founder's intention, right? So basically you're looking at the symptoms. So it is a little bit like a doctor. So you take the heartbeat, you take the pulse, you look at different symptoms, and then you take a best guess saying that, hey, this might be there, this might be the issue, and then as you go on, I think you get more and more data, right? Yeah, so that's what in some sense I would say that is my method, like kind of exploring the space together. And some of those problems you'll have to because the space itself might be new, you might have to do some kind of experimentation to come at an answer that might be good. And again, you have to be nimble-footed, because it is possible that what you might say might actually either backfire or may not have any effect, or may have a great effect, right? So I'm a great fan of doing smaller experiments together and figuring out what works best for that founder, for that product, for that industry, for that funding stage, right? So yeah, so that's what I would say.
Cool. Hemang, what's your playbook?
I mean, very similar to what Vinayak shared, uh, but I like to sort of think of go back to my doctorate days and how my advisor used to mentor me, and I try to follow his playbook, which is that he's not going to solve my problem, but he's going to ask me questions or he's going to make connections for me, but I have to solve the problems myself, right? So in this case, I'm very clear that I'm not like a work resource as such for that founder, but I'm someone that that's a wall that they can bounce ideas off, and my role is to serve as a bridge. And bridge to where? So it could be determining that I hope they clearly understand the why of what they're building, right? Why that problem is important, and once that clarity is there, it's usually understanding what they are doing, what they have defined, and how they are solving. And quite a few times, the challenge may not be on the technical front. It may be stopping them from doing too much of engineering because they have something which is good enough and ready to launch. They're like, hey, just launch, and you need more business traction, or you need to talk to customers rather than spend more time on the engineering front. So it's enabling the bridge which says that, hey, I think you have something which is good enough here, and now you need to test the market. Or it could be something where you're in an early stage, you're defining things, and one of the areas I'm very passionate about is intellectual property, and saying that, hey, I think as you're ideating, as you're doing this initial stage, make sure you have an innovation strategy, an IP strategy, not just from a view of building patents, but also setting up a culture, right? Because a founder's time will be caught up in multiple things, and when the founder is away, let's say uh, we're talking, to different investors and all that, the rest of the team at the office now carries the baton where they have to innovate further. And if they're not empowered to do that, so it's my challenge to the startup founder at that point, that when you're not there, what happens? Are people empowered to take the decisions? Are they empowered to challenge your assumptions? So it could be on that front, or it could be as you were saying, right? That, hey, they are maybe ready for investment, and what are the bridges that I can open up? So I serve as a bridge, not to solve their problem, but to ask them the questions that hopefully they solve themselves.
Yeah, and I think just to add to what Hemang said quickly, I think asking the right questions is important, right? Because the questions that you ask might one price out the information that you want. It will also make the founder think about his or her blind spots, and that is like a very important job as a founder, right? And again, like though I'm a CTO, I often tell startups that you are over engineering, and that is, I think that's a very common problem. That's why I wanted to quickly highlight it, that over engineering is such a common problem that people think, hey, I want to scale, and I'll build this and then people will come. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to kind of incrementally build it, and that is where I think like what you sometimes read in the media, and people who actually build companies, actually there is like that slight difference is if you follow the media too much, I think there are all these fashion trends that are there. You should use microservices, you should use X, you should use Kubernetes, and so on and so forth, and these trends keep on coming. But I think as a mentor, I found that one is that do the minimal thing and let, in some sense, the business kind of guide you, right? Because it's a journey with like lot of folks in the road, and what kind of product, what kind of company you become depends on what kind of decisions to make, right? So as a mentor, my job is also to enable how to ask the right questions to help them along that journey, right? And not just like like in some sense like pull them in a certain direction, but kind of tell them, hey, these are the paths and now you can choose, and these are the trade-offs of each of these paths that you might take.
Sure. No, I totally, I think that's very insightful that you don't really have to give them solutions. Most of the time, if you just, sort of expose them to a few things that probably which they are not thinking about, and nudge them, help them here and there to sort of come up with their own solutions. I think that is what a lot of what mentoring is about. So yeah, I think that's a very beautiful insight there. Thank you, Hemang and Vinayak. I would quickly tell everyone again to put questions on chat, like if you have any, because I would love to keep this interactive, but otherwise, because no one's so far asked, I would love asking all the questions that I have, so I will continue to do that. So essentially, what happens when you start mentoring someone, or you start a session, or and there are so many different platforms. People reach out to you with your own corporate campaigns, versus a not-for-profit like Headstart doing a session with you, versus some people might directly reach out to you on LinkedIn. In fact, yeah, before I ask that question, what are your preferred channels? How do you sort of split time between different channels in which you mentor, and what do you which channels do you like versus others, if there are any preferences?
Okay. I don't have any preferences. Meaning I'm caught in DMs. Through our corporate programs, that opens up a natural funnel anyway.
Absolutely.
But even otherwise, right? It's LinkedIn or someone. Just yesterday I spoke with someone, who got my number through a friend. Even that's fine.
Vinayak?
Yeah, so again, it's varied. I think how people reach me, right? There's LinkedIn, Twitter, Discord. I mean, I'm available on pretty much channel, and different people have different ways of reaching me. And sometimes I just like typically starts with someone asking a certain question, and that makes me think, and I maybe respond to that, and then that person asks another question, and then that kind of relationship get built. And though there have been many such relationships that I've been part of it. Informally, we don't. I mean, I will say it's informal mentoring. And again, like I said, like it's a porous boundary, right? Like I want to explore a space, and if they are asking certain questions on my expertise, and then that conversation continues. As part of the job, again, there are like slightly more formal channels, like there's like Teams that people can ping me. They can set up one-on-one time with me on my calendar. And we also have regular catch-ups that are there, and also often we have sessions like these where typically every month or every 6 months I feel okay, I'm kind of maybe answering for this particular set of people, either either industry or like a stage, similar kind of problem. What I do is I typically like have do a webinar or something that I record, where I kind of encapsulate whatever I've learned in some sense, like just like a programmer, it's like don't repeat yourself. So I kind of encapsulate that, and if I find that okay, and so what happens is that it encodes in some sense my knowledge or my thoughts on a certain topic, and then if a new founder comes with the same question, I say, hey, why don't you go and watch this, and if it solves your problem, great. If it doesn't, or if your problem is more specific, then let's talk, because then you will have context, right? So again, like I'm also as a mentor, I also think how do I optimize my own time as well as make it more asynchronous as well, right? And again, like sometimes it's like just like an email, and I've had people reach to me on LinkedIn, and whenever I do these webinars, we put out our email and social media channels, and people ping through that as well. So preference, I think earlier I would say preference was maybe in person, because again that is always the best. But again, even earlier, right, through online also works, and there are so many people in other countries I've never met, countries I've never been to, but I have worked with them very closely because technology itself is so advanced. So in person would be preferred, but again, like that's not a barrier for me to talk to or reach out to somebody. So
great. And yeah, I was smiling all the way. So many words like encapsulation and dry are being thrown around, and I'm sure there are a lot of participants who are from engineering background, and who are who are actually enjoying it, and there are other people who are trying to look up what is that supposed to mean. So yeah, it's fun that way, always talking to engineering folks. We never kind of lose our that's our parlance, right? That's how we talk. So great. That's a very interesting question here. I think the name is not available, but I'll just go ahead and read it out. How do you manage to keep the motivation strong with a particular startup, assuming you start mentoring a few others over a period? So I think very interesting question, because you have limited time, and sometimes you may feel, if for whatever reasons that you've given what the startup needs, and it's now probably not so much in it for you, or probably a drag. The startup might still need you, but you found other interesting startups and you want to put your time there. How do you keep the motivation strong, for that one? So can
Yeah.
I go first?
Yeah. So, interesting question, right? So, again, I think as long as the founder is coachable, I don't think so much about what am I getting out of it. Obviously, if I'm getting something out of it, that's like a bonus and that's the extra, and pretty much that's the case, right? Even if you've done the same thing 10 times before, right? Like for example, I have a background in data, and I gave like 3 examples in my own career where I learned something new. And often I think just because of the proliferation of tools and the proliferation of technology, there's like so many, even for a certain problem there are so many tools out there, like so it is so always there is will be something. I have rarely found that somebody is I'm not learning from them, because there'll be always a new tool. And then again, it's a very good exploration way for me. For example, even if I've solved the same problem, they are using a different tool, I often talk to them about why do you prefer this, have you looked at this, what is good about this, then I'll go and read and do my homework, right? So it has, I can't think actually of a single instance where I have not learned. So I think it's very because one is obviously technology itself is evolving so fast. The second thing is also the proliferation of tools, whether it is like SaaS and paid or proprietary or open source, in a variety, right? Like if you just were to do like marketing automation, for example, if you take a non-tech example, there's so many. There's like there's Lever Tab, there's Amplitude, and each one does that. So I think there's so many opportunities to learn multiple things. So even if they ask you like very specific question, I think uh, there has never been a challenge, at least from my end, in terms of helping out startups. And I think one is obviously the learning that you get yourself, and also the second part is also the satisfaction of having helped someone, right? So it is like a more like a service kind of role. So even if you do not gain anything in terms of knowledge, it is still rewarding, because you know that if somebody did something, you kind of help them on the way, right? And that itself, I think satisfaction is good enough. So motivation has not been a problem for me. I usually already also know that I've been working with Headstart also for a while, so I've been doing this for like now 15-20 years myself. So yeah, so I think there's always something new to learn.
Sure. No, absolutely. I think, typically, I think it's a very, very good question, because I think I've also kind of struggled. It's difficult to accept publicly that that you really, have been there. But I think I've been there, and I found that, okay, this startup is not someone I really want to mentor. So what I kind of do is that I sort of tell them that, this is what I had to give, and maybe we should have this n number of sessions, like whatever n looks good, for the or tell the startup clearly that maybe I'm not the best suited for this. And it's not so much about motivation, but again, it's more about that, have I given them what they need right now? And if they have, and now if it is either they're not executing it, or they're finding it, whatever, for whatever reason, if they're finding it hard to be able to follow the advice, then I think that is also an important feedback to give to such startups. And yeah, I think there is no good way to do that. You have to just be honest and tell them that this is it, like I have limited time, I can only do this much. Until you execute this much and you have had this thing, you do this, and then we come, you call me back, and then we will have another discussion. But until that, I think it doesn't make any sense to have furthermore conversations. So this is what I have particularly personally been able to do a couple of times. You have anything to add, Hemang?
Yeah, I fully agree with what both of you have covered. I think the founder's energy is what keeps the motivation up. If you see that they are working towards it, and every time they connect with you, it's not just a random sync up, right? The request comes with a, hey, here's what I did, and I want your input on something. They respect your time. They keep it pinpointed, and even if, and there'll be times when all of us are juggling many things. We bounce from one call to another, and so there's always the risk that this mentoring call will be like just any other call. And if the founder is or whoever you're discussing with, it could be the CTO, it could be someone else. But if you see that they are energetic, they are keeping track of what they are doing, I think that sets the motivation up. And like both of you, my selfish motivation is to learn, and because they help challenge my own assumptions and help me uncover a few things which I would have not thought of myself actively.
All right, so there's a question from Shubhankita, very nice question, but sorry, I'm not taking this because it's beyond the scope of the discussion that we are having today. And there's another question about common struggles of founders, etc., which I'm skipping. I'm sorry about that, because again, I don't find it very relevant to the mentoring related discussion that we are having today. Right, guys? So if you have any mentoring related question, please feel free to ask that. Let's keep it very, very relevant, because otherwise, we've got so much general expertise and gyan here that you can actually go and astray into I don't know, 20 different very, very relevant important topics. So yeah, as a moderator, I'll take that call. Sorry about not being able to answer your question, but yeah, there is another interesting question, not from Pragati, and it is that not everyone has access to the right mentors and people. So what is your advice to these people who find it difficult to reach the right people at the right time? How do you think? Because I think a lot of people reach us, and you feel that you should have probably done this 6 months back, or you should have probably or probably some people might reach you early, and you feel that why don't you just do a little bit of this, and then once you are at this stage, then we talk. So that might also happen, but yeah, in general, if there are any advice to people on how to find mentors, what is the right way to find mentors? Hemang, you focus.
Yeah,
I think word of mouth works really well over here, and the reason I say it is that if there is someone who is, let's say, in your network as a founder, and they tell you that you should talk to this person because this person will guide you on how to go from this point A to point B, and you best talk to this person. I think that word of mouth. So keep your ears open to whenever any such recommendation comes out, and quite often it will be unsolicited recommendation. So you might be just thinking that this is just someone else who's trying to give me advice, but if a name pops up, do that. Do make a note of that. The other thing I would recommend is pay attention to a lot of chat on both LinkedIn and Twitter. I find them to be platforms, where, of course, there's a fair amount of trolling and all which happens. There are quite a few folks who are sharing their insights, just purely out of love. So I think that's the other channel. I keep attention to, okay, who's there that's talking to my next level up. So you might be thinking that, okay, for me to get mentorship, I'd like to approach this founder who's taken his company to an IPO. And that person might be 4 or 5 rungs up the ladder from where you are in terms of what you need to do in order to grow. Select someone who can guide you to the next 1 or 2 levels up, and then slowly move up, right? So that you're not so out of reach. Like if I were to learn tennis, I won't approach a Federer or a Djokovic for coaching, right? I'll approach the one who's my level and maybe +2 at that point. And I guess the third thing is the free plug for Headstart, right? Like join Headstart, be active in it, learn from people there, because these folks are really doing things out of love for the ecosystem for nothing. So they're good people. Join Headstart. And maybe Vinayak, over to you.
Yeah, so I would kind of extend that, and I would say two things. One is you know Alan Kay has this quote saying that a change in perspective is like worth 80 IQ points, right? So look for different kind of perspectives, and I would say also be a little, to be honest, maybe like shameless, if I were to use the word, like in approaching people, and tell them. And this is where I think being articulate helps, right? Like many times, I think if you can tell me, if you approach me and you tell me, hey, this is my problem, and this is what I'm trying to solve, you can just I mean, you'll be surprised by, if you send a request to me or Hemang or, lots of other folks, right, whom in your circle, saying that, hey, I am trying to solve this problem, and can you help me either find a solution? Would you be the right person, or can you recommend me somebody who does, right? So even if you don't have a network, you approach on LinkedIn and articulate your problem really well. And writing is a skill that you have to develop as a founder, because communication is key. If you can develop that skill, and you can, I will be amazed, right? And I've returned to like all kinds of people, and people have said, hey, I don't have time, but I'll introduce you to somebody who can help you in this. So people are really helpful. They will reply back to messages, and while you might feel, oh, this person is really busy, and they may or may not reply. And I think that is where I think Hemang's advice is really useful. Like look at one or two levels, but sometimes it may not be possible to know that at what level a person is, right? Because so even if you so the trick in that sense is like articulate a problem well and ask that, be very honest, saying that, hey, I'm trying to solve this problem. Would you be the right person to talk? Would you give the time? If not, can you give me a recommendation to somebody who can either give the time or has the expertise, who can solve at my level, right? And you'll be amazed how people will do. The second thing is like Headstart is one option as well, but there are lots of, even whether it's technology, whether it is like product, there are lots of good meetups. Especially one of the superpowers I keep on telling people about that Bangalore has over lots of other ecosystems, that even in India, is the amount of time that people give selflessly to kind of mentoring and working with other people and community. And that is why Bangalore is such a strong ecosystem, not because of the funding that comes in. Funding is like basically like adding fuel. The car is being made by the people who are giving those free time. The funding is the fuel that is making that car run, right? And you'll be amazed, again, there also people will be very happy to make connections. And this is I think, be very shameless in some sense and be articulate about your problems, and you'll be amazed how much people will help. Because I think most people will naturally help, unless like people are super busy, and there might be a few bad apples, but I would say 95 or 99% of people will be very happy to help.
Sure. There's a question
from just one point, right? Like there is a Zen philosophy which people might find funny, but I have seen in my life also. So that says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
The teacher appears, yeah.
And while I found it like really funny when I first saw it, I think I've seen that happen so many times in my own life and with other startups. It's actually true, I believe.
Oh, absolutely. I totally live by that quote. So I can totally understand that once you are ready, once you are actually looking for something, essentially there is this take on Visibig editors, that I have, that what you seek, what you get. So essentially, I mean, this is what I've experienced myself, that when you are ready, you would find that piece of advice, or that person, or that mentor, for sure. There's a quick question from Shiva side that I will spend like a minute on. Do mentors offer equity stake in the startups they mentor? Mentoring is not really, about taking equity stake. It's more, about knowledge sharing, pretty much. What you're looking for in terms of equity stake is something called as advisor. And you can definitely add advisors to your, startup board, or, if you want to become, if you're looking at that, you can become an advisor at a startup board. That is a culture that is very sort of not so popular in the Indian ecosystem, but is very very helpful. That you should have as a startup, you should definitely have a few advisors who can actually regularly work with you in exchange for some equity. Regularly work with you and take you from place X to 10x, right? So something like that. Those kind of people can be onboarded as an advisor to the board. Typically, not so much on mentoring. Mentoring is either pro bono or maybe there are financial exchanges, but yeah, that's where kind of it ends. Um, uh, there's a question from Manoj. How do you find right mentors specific to some industry like a finance or M&A or JV or debt structuring? I think it's partly covered in what people answered so far. Yeah, is there anything, Vinayak or Hemang, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so one tactical advice I would say, right? Like one is, compared to maybe like 10 years, 15 years before, like when there was no social media, you have both LinkedIn and Twitter. So if you are interested in a certain sector, like try following the news and know who the many times these people are on LinkedIn or Twitter. So just send them an email, or that is like a good way to do research. And I think there are also paid options that are available on LinkedIn, like email and other things, which which assure that at least some people will respond to that by surfacing, especially for very busy people. There are a few other platforms, and try to recollect their names, where they have like some kind of an experts exchange where people can ask questions, but I've not seen them being very. I mean, they are like a little bit hit and miss, and they might be there, for specific, industries. But I think LinkedIn as a generic tool has been like pretty useful, and also has Twitter has been quite useful, just to tag and ask questions in that. So there, and also the last but not the least, like industry events also, if it is a specific industry, like say manufacturing of say plastic, or your handicrafts or anything like that. I think industry events also is a good way, both online and offline also can really help.
I like to add here, just to sort of give a different, viewpoint. It's very tempting to look for a mentor in the exact domain that you're working on, and I believe that makes sense if you want, let's say, pure engineering or technical input. And by technical input, I mean even if it's a non-tech startup, right? It would be like execution level, guidance. So for that part, I think it's fine. But if your ask is to expand your thought process, it may be worth to look beyond your immediate sector. Like, for example, I don't work with, say, e-commerce startups and all that. And if it's about developing the backend for what goes on into an e-commerce store, I may not be the right technical person for that. But then there's a lot of other things which I would be doing, let's say, at a systems level, or probably on some of the other areas, wherein, that input could possibly help, that different perspective can help. And, sometimes the mentor will help, challenge your assumptions, and you'll find those challenging questions come from outside your domain. If it's a mentor from the same domain, that person is going to be very likely to say, okay, fine, this is legacy knowledge, I see what you're thinking. An outsider will try to question how strong your fundamentals are.
Right.
So just maybe shake it up. Yeah.
Right. No, absolutely. I think great piece of advice that.
Yeah, this is exceptional advice from Hemang. And there's also actually scientific research which proves that this is true. Like there is this very early famous book, I think some of you might have read, called Range, that talks about how outsider in perspective can also sometimes really help. So it's scientifically in some sense proven that this tends to work as well.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great book. I think it's a great read for people. It's about being generalist versus being strong in one area. So yeah. Okay, there are a bunch of other interesting, very nice questions coming up, but unfortunately we've run out of time. Right, so Muskan and a few other anonymous, audience people who have asked great questions. Thank you so much for your questions. but I think you would have to go on to LinkedIn and Twitter and reach out to Hemang and Vinayak, and they would be happy to answer that, and I'm taking this on their behalf. Vinayak, you have something to add?
Can I quickly? There's one very good question. If I can have a couple of minutes, I can quickly answer.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have time. Sure.
So it says, in your experience, what are the common things good, well-intentioned founders struggle with? And I think I won't give a very long answer, but I will tell one specific thing, that startups that are scaling, one of the things that good, well-intentioned, really smart founders actually struggle with is a loss of control. And they feel that by either delegating or by hiring new people or not being exactly how they want it to be, they really struggle with loss of control. This is something I have personally struggled with. But this is a very, very common problem that I've seen with almost 70% of the founders. I mean, it's more than 50% of the founders easily, that they might be good at that thing, maybe engineering or marketing or something else, and delegating that, and so that they have to in some sense get out of their own way to help the company grow, and that is sometimes a very tough call for some of the founders. So yeah, just wanted to quickly answer that. It's a very good question.
Sure. All right. One final piece of advice for people who are looking to become mentors, or an internet resource that you want to you want to suggest to people who want to become mentors. What would that be?
Resource, I don't know. I think I would say that have an open mind, and I think be coachable, and also look for people who are coachable, and that really works well. And I would say that don't look at it there might be things that you do tactically in the short term, but I think look at the longer term growth, because it's sometimes as a mentor also, you have to choose doing very tactical stuff, but you have to see how those kind of tactical advice can stack up over a period of time, right? Whether it is hiring, whether it's culture, whether it is specific technology. I think that long-term orientation and open-mindedness, I would say, are the big things. Resource, I can't think of anything right now immediately. Probably, I think I would say Angela Duckworth's book, I think on Grit, I think might be something worth reading, or on the growth mindset is something that maybe all mentors and mentees can learn from.
So definitely great advice. Hemang, parting thoughts, advice.
I'm a fan of a framework. Pick a framework that works. I love this why, what, how. It's a very simple framework, and apply it on both ends. Like the feedback that a mentee is giving you, slotted into these three, buckets. And same way for yourself, right? Ask yourself, why do I want to be a mentor? What am I really offering, and how can I help this founder or CTO from with regards to their challenge. So adopt a framework. This is what works best, and it's quite intuitive. So I find it easy to apply. It also helps keep the conversations on track, right? Because a lot of times there'll be a conversation, a free flow thing will happen, and you'll lose track of time, and then you're like, oh shoot, what were you talking about, right? And what did this person tell me, and how do I really solve the problem? Apply it on both ends. If you find some other framework, go for it, but choose one and stick with it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hemang and Mr. Vinayak. Thank you so much for spending an hour on a Monday evening with us, and thank you so much everyone for your great questions. I am sure there was some learning for you, and I'm also sure that you would take those learnings and become great mentors and help India get many more successful startups. So yep, thank you so much. Keep enjoying the Startup September from Headstart Network Foundation. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us. Thanks, Ujjwal, for fabulous moderation and keeping it engaging for us also. Thank you.
Thank you, Ujjwal.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye. You all.